In the early 2000s, licensed games were a dime a dozen. Whilst a few were genuinely very good, a lot of these games were either painfully average and forgotten about, or just painfully bad, and there didn't really seem to be an in-between. So what happens when you take a forgotten and kind of panned early 2000s cartoon and the anti-grav racing genre and throw it in a blender? Well, you get today's game. Welcome to the Worst Racing Games, the internet series where you guys suggest different racing games that you think are terrible, then I play them, review them, and rank them. So last week we had the frankly downright terrible White Van Racer for the PS2, a Phoenix Games classic, if you will. So this week the Worst Racing Games wheel has blessed upon us probably one of the most cursed names for a game I've ever seen. This is Butt Ugly Martians, Zoom, or Doom. Or if you want to be extra classy, you can abbreviate that to Bumzod. Yep, that's what we're going to be calling it, Bumzod. So before we dive into the actual game, we first have to understand what the Butt Ugly Martians actually are. So this was a very short-lived animated TV show from the early 2000s that ran between February 2001 and February 2003. It aired here in the UK on CITV and in the US on Nickelodeon. So I'll just read you the actual premise from the Butt Ugly Martians wiki page because I don't think I can sum it up any better anyway. The plot of the series begins when the Butt Ugly Martians, or BUM, are forced to invade planets for the evil Emperor Bog. When they are sent to Earth, they become addicted to American culture. Deciding not to hurt Earth, they simply pretend to be occupying the planet for Bog. They are shown around by their Earthling friends, Mike, Cedric, and Angela. The Butt Ugly Martians continue to hang out on Earth as long as Emperor Bog never finds out. And that's the show, apparently. With that premise, it both sounds fantastic and absolutely terrible at the same time, so fair play, guys. Anyway, let's get to the actual game. Okay, so this game came out in December 2002 here in Europe and July 2003 in the US, and that was on the PlayStation 2, which is the version we're looking at today. There was, however, a GameCube port, but weirdly that only released in Europe back in May 2003, so not quite sure what was going on there. Anyway, this was developed by Runecraft, who, fun fact, were briefly owned by the BBC around the same time this game came out. And if you want to know what we're dealing with here, let's just go through some of the games they've worked on previously. So we've got some absolute classics like Barbie Explorer, Jim Henson's The Hoobs, Westlife Fan-O-Mania, and Arthur Ready to Race. So, yeah, this was very much a licensed game factory situation. Anyway, this was published by Vivendi Universal Games, which at the time was putting out all kinds of stuff, some good, like Simpsons Hit and Run, and some, well, like this. Now, I never played this as a kid, I never watched the show as a kid, so this definitely is not going to be nostalgia talking. I went in completely blind, and tried to figure out if this is actually any good, or if this is exactly what it sounds like. So, when you first boot up the game, you are greeted with something that genuinely caught me off guard. A language selection screen. I wasn't caught off guard by the fact I had to choose my language. It's just the screen itself. It's literally one of the Martians standing there, holding a flag of the language you want to speak. And I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of laugh. It's quite clever, it's charming, in its own weird Martian kind of way. It really doesn't take much to impress me. Anyway, from there you're taken to the main menu, which is displayed on this big golden monitor. It's clearly trying to look futuristic, but it also kind of looks like something you'd see in a low-budget sci-fi show, which I guess, to be fair, is exactly what this game is based on. So you've got your usual options like single player and multiplayer, and then there's assist mode, which is basically just single player, but with steering assist turned on. Which is funny, because the game is actually already easy, but we'll get to that. Then you move on to the character selection, and this is where things get a bit questionable. You've got characters like Do Wah Diddy. What? I'm sorry, there's only one Diddy that I recognise. Yeah, you thought that was going somewhere else, didn't you? Anyway, there's also some random human in this game called Stoat Muldoon. I don't even know anymore, guys. Anyway, at that point, you just gotta stop asking questions like, sure, why not, let's just roll with it. So in terms of single-player content, the game actually looks like it has quite a lot going on. I'll read you what we got. There's the Conqueror's Cup, Practice Mode, Quick Race, Time Attack, Speed Challenge, and Battle Challenge. Now on paper, that seems like a really decent variety, but in reality, most of these modes are basically the same thing. So let's break it down. The main one, well, the one you'll spend most of your time in, is the Conqueror's Cup. This is your standard championship mode. There are 3 cups, one with 5 races, one with 7, and one with 9. Each one increases the difficulty slightly, mostly through AI behaviour, and if you beat all 3, you unlock a bonus cup where you race through all 9 tracks again, but mirrored, which is a nice little extra, I guess. Not exactly groundbreaking, but at least it is something. And then you've got Practice Mode and Quick Race, which are exactly what they sound like. Time Attack is there for setting lap times if that's what you're into. And then you've got Speed Challenge and Battle Challenge. Now these sound interesting. Speed Challenge is basically a shorter version of the Cup. 5 races, each one increasing in difficulty. That's it. Then there's Battle Challenge, which is one-on-one races against other characters. But here's the thing, they don't really add anything meaningful, it's just more of the same racing with slightly different labels. So yeah, technically there's variety, but in practice it all kind of blends together. Now before we go any further, if you're a fan of racing games, or terrible racing games in this case, then please consider hitting that subscribe button and tapping the bell to stay up to date with my future uploads. And if you want to support the channel or series any further, please consider checking out my Patreon using the link in your description below. Over on Patreon, you can get access to videos early, your name in the credits of uploads, and behind the scenes goodies. And you'll be supporting me and the mental slog I put myself through to play these games. For legal reasons, that was a joke. Anyway, thanks for listening to me sell myself to you, let's move on to the actual gameplay. Because this is where things, of course, fall apart just a little bit. So this is a futuristic racing game. You're driving hovercrafts basically around these winding sci-fi tracks. And clearly the developers were aiming for something in the same general space as games like Wipeout. But here's the difference, in Wipeout, surviving the race is like half the challenge, but in Bumzod you can basically win by accident. I'm not exaggerating, the game is incredibly forgiving. Your hovercraft is immune to physical damage when scraping walls, which means you can just bounce around the track with almost no consequences. There's no real penalty for sloppy driving. You don't need precision, and you don't even really need skill. You can just hold the accelerator, sort of steer in the general direction of the track, and still come out on top. It genuinely feels like the game is designed so that anyone can win, no matter what. Now, to be fair, you're not completely invincible. There are obstacles on the track, and there are weapon pickups. These can stun your vehicle, spin you out, or slow you down for a few seconds. But even then, unless you're on like the final difficulty, it barely matters, because after a short moment, you're back in control and often still in the same position anyway. And then there are the power-ups. There are actually quite a few of them, and they have different effects, but a lot of them feel kind of pointless. The only one that really matters is the speed boost, and even that, you don't actually need. But in all fairness, the power-up system is at least kind of interesting, because you go through a pickup at random, and you'll get the first level of that pickup, so you can upgrade it twice by driving through more pickups. So on paper, there's a layer of strategy as to when you can use them. But basically, if you get the speed boost one, just wait till you've picked up 3 and use it at the end. Because the first tier of the speed boost is an auto steer. Kinda like the same vibes as a bullet bill in Mario Kart, but without any of the speed or any of the power behind it. So it will drive you right directly down the middle of the track, and it does not avoid obstacles. So if you use this and there is something in the middle of the track to block you, you will just crash into it and keep crashing into it until the power-up runs out. What an absolutely stupid design that is. Just infuriatingly dumb. But anyway, I digress. Even the power-ups you don't really need. You can win races without ever using them. And for an early 2000s racing game, the AI isn't even super rubber bandy. But if you fall behind, you can catch up. But it does remove any sense of tension, because the game basically is always going to give you another chance. So even on the hardest difficulty, you could probably finish everything this game has to offer in literally a couple of hours, which is not great. So let's talk track design, because this is one area where the game does at least try to do something interesting. The tracks themselves are actually pretty creative. You've got multiple paths going on, environmental hazards, which can be quite annoying, and branching routes. And in theory, this should add some depth. You're supposed to learn the tracks, figure out the best routes, and optimize your racing line. But the problem with that is, when you're already winning every race without having to try, why bother learning the tracks, because there's no incentive to explore or improve. You're not being challenged in the first place, so why bother? And then there's the collision detection, which is questionable, because of course it is. This is an early 2000s racing game made on a budget. I feel like I say this every week. The collision detection isn't great, guys, okay? It's not the worst we've seen, but it's definitely inconsistent enough to be noticeable. So visually, this game is kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, you've got some CGI cutscenes, and honestly, they're okay. In fact, if anything, the CGI cutscenes in this game look better than the actual show, which I guess isn't exactly a high bar because... ooh, yikes. But once you get into the actual gameplay, it's a different story. The graphics aren't exactly butt ugly, see what I did there, but they're definitely below what the PS2 was capable of. The environments have some colour and some variety, and some of the track designs are visually interesting, but the vehicles themselves, they are boring as anything, guys. They are so dull. They don't have that sleek, futuristic look that you'd expect from this type of game. And the special effects are very basic. There's simple explosions and basic particle effects and some flames and steam, but nothing that really stands out, to be honest. It all feels a bit low budget. But that said, the frame rate is actually pretty solid, and the sense of speed is decent enough. So it's not like a technical disaster, it's just very underwhelming. Now, whilst the game might not be the most interesting in terms of its visuals, the sound and music is where the game actually redeems itself just a little bit. Because the soundtrack is surprisingly good. It's full of techno and dance-sounding tracks that feel like they belong to a much higher budget anti-grav racing game. It's energetic, it fits the gameplay, and it genuinely stands out as one of the better parts of the experience. The sound effects, on the other hand, not so much. They are pretty generic and they don't have much impact to the game. And then you've got the voice acting, which uses the same actors from the TV show, and honestly, it's not that bad. In fact, it's surprisingly decent. The opening cutscene actually got a couple of laughs out of me, but in-game, the voice lines are very limited, and they repeat a lot. Which I think is pretty standard for a lot of these animated tie-in video games. They have the voice actors, but they don't actually use them very much. So, how was the game received in terms of critical response? Well, as I'm sure you can probably guess, it wasn't received very well. The PS2 version currently holds a 41 out of 100 on Metacritic, which is quite rough. The GameCube version doesn't even have any reviews to get a score, which probably tells you everything you need to know. As for sales, it reportedly sold around about 20,000 copies, which is extremely low, even for a licensed title like this. Those stats are from VG charts. So now the time has come to rank Bumzod in our worst racing games tier list. Now, this is somehow not one of the worst games I've played in this series. It's definitely rough, very rough, but I think for me, this game will be going into the hot garbage category. This was a game that was made quickly, with a limited budget, to capitalize on a TV show that literally no one remembers. There are a few bright spots to it, a decent soundtrack, some okay cutscenes, and some fairly creative track design, but it's just held back by one major issue. It's just boring. There's no challenge or sense of progression or reason to improve. And without that, a racing game's kind of pointless. So unless you're a die-hard fan of the show, or you're just curious about the obscure games that we cover on this channel, there's really no reason to go out of your way to play this whatsoever. But hey, at least it gave us one of the most ridiculous game titles of all time, and honestly I think that might be this game's greatest achievement. Being called Butt Ugly Martians, Zoom or Doom, or Bumzod for short. Sorry, I just had to say it one more time. So that takes us to the end of this week's episode of Worst Racing Games. So let me know, would you rank this game any differently? Have you played it? Did you watch the show? Share all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, if you have a suggestion you want to see added to this wheel, let me know as well. We are now up to like 170 different games, so I guess this will be going on for the foreseeable future. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thank you and goodbye.